Welcome to the Kindle Chronicles, the Friday podcast all about your Kindle. I'm Len Edgerly. Today is February 2nd, 2018. Greetings from downtown Denver, Colorado, where this week I connected by Skype with an Edgar-winning thriller author, Meg Gardiner, whose latest novel was published by Dutton this week. It's titled Into the Black Nowhere, and its portrayal of a mesmerizing murderer led me to ask the author why exactly we are so fascinated by serial killers.
Humanity always wants to try to defeat the monster, and to do that, we have to try to identify it and understand it.
Also this week, Boffo earnings from Amazon, a new and visionary project for Jeff Bezos and friends, my visit to an Amazon treasure truck here in Denver, and why you won't have to turn off Alexa to watch Amazon's Super Bowl ad on Sunday. First up in news, Amazon's earnings report released on February 1st crushed Wall Street's expectations and thus sent AMZN stocks soaring by 2.9% at the close on a day today when the Dow Jones Industrials average plummeted an ominously numbered 666 points. One widely circulated bar graph showed that Amazon has been profitable for 11 straight quarters, with the latest bar at the far right soaring to a record profit of $1.9 billion. That's for one quarter, 3 months. Amazon attributed a big chunk of that profit, $789 million, to a tax benefit resulting from the new federal tax law. But even without that boost, the last quarter of 2018 would have produced the largest quarterly profit in Amazon's history. Jeff Bezos and the company press release took particular note of Alexa's success last year. Our 2017 projections for Alexa were very optimistic and we far exceeded them, he said. We don't see positive surprises of this magnitude very often. Expect us to double down. The report said there are now more than 30,000 skills for Alexa and customers can control more than 4,000 smart home devices with Alexa. Recode sends out an excellent daily news summary that I get in today's paragraph on the Amazon earnings report, linked to an informative story by Jason Del Rey, as well as a 4,600-word think piece by Stephen Levy, whose back-channel reporting team is now part of Wired. Today was a good day to read Levy's piece titled Inside Amazon's Artificial Intelligence Flywheel. He tells how Amazon in the past 7 or 8 years has transformed itself from a deep learning AI wannabe into a formidable AI power. A series of 6-pagers, the pithy proposals that always contain a press release announcing an envisioned new product or service, moved Amazon forward along the AI machine learning path, Levy writes. AI is now described as part of everything Amazon does, a flywheel of innovation and growth that has a life of its own. Levy's piece was published the day the earnings came out, so he had not yet seen the Bezos quote about how far Amazon's very optimistic projections for Alexa were exceeded in 2017. That quote made me remember something that Jeff has said numerous times when he's talking about why he started Amazon, because it seemed to have sort of an echo of the enthusiasm that he expresses in that quote about Alexa. In his 2010 address at Princeton, Bezos said of what he had seen at the Wall Street firm where he had a good job in 1994, quote, I came across the fact that web usage was growing at 2,300% per year. I'd never seen or heard of anything that grew that fast, and the idea of building an online bookstore with millions of titles, something that simply couldn't exist in the physical world, was very exciting to me. Well, this week, Amazon's founder said of the 2017 Alexa results, we don't see positive surprises of this very often. What Jeff Bezos does when something surprises him on the upside is to go all in. 24 years ago, that meant quitting a big job on Wall Street and driving to Seattle with his wife to found Amazon. What will it mean in 2018? Expect us to double down, Bezos said. Well, Amazon now has 5,000 people working on Echo and Alexa. That's not a big share, of course, of the company's current workforce of 566,000 employees worldwide, but I bet it's going to get bigger. By the way, I was so impressed with Levy's piece on Amazon's AI strategy that I signed up for a free 3-month trial to Wired. He recently brought his back-channel reporting team that had been located on the Medium.com platform back into Wired, so it seemed like a good time for me to support Wired and back-channel with a subscription. It looks like a pretty good deal because after the free 3-month trial expires, my annual fee for Wired print and digital will be just under $20. I'll have a link in the show notes to Wired's subscription offer if you'd like to join me in supporting some very high-quality tech journalism. It's got quite a history. Wired, I remember when Wired first came out and the very weird typography in it fascinated me that I didn't think you could do that in a magazine, and they've continued over the years to have really cutting-edge coverage and more deeply thought-out coverage of tech issues than you see it in a lot of other places. Next in news, we have been hearing lots of rumors about Amazon's plan to disrupt the healthcare industry lately, and this week we finally learned what's really been going on and what's ahead. It turns out that Jeff Bezos and 2 partners, Warren Buffett of Berkshire Hathaway and Jamie Dimon of J.P. Morgan, are organizing a not-for-profit effort to cut healthcare costs. Their announcement was short on specifics, but they said they plan to focus on technology solutions to lower healthcare costs for employees at their 3 companies. A Financial Times column by Brooke Masters welcomed the initiative, but noted that Amazon has already had one failure in the medical area. It purchased a big stake in drugstore.com in 1999, but failed to bring down costs enough to attract enough business to make it a success. Amazon ended up selling drugstore.com to Walgreens in 2011. We've known that Warren Buffett is a big admirer of Jeff Bezos. I enjoy imagining the discussions that they've been having about this project and that they'll continue to have with J.P. Morgan's Dimon. The age spread is interesting. Bezos is the youngest of the team at 54. Dimon is 7 years older at 61, and Buffett is still going strong at 87. I happen to know that Warren Buffett will turn 88 on August 30th because he is exactly 20 years older than I am to the day. Healthcare stocks took a hit at the news that Bezos and friends are organizing some kind of initiative, but as Ronnie Malla at Recode pointed out, the healthcare industry is huge, accounting for nearly 20% of U.S. GDP. On the other hand, the market capitalization of the 3 companies dwarfs the biggest healthcare companies on the scene now, such as Johnson & Johnson, United Health, and Pfizer. Recode quoted a Barclays analyst as saying, "We are never dismissive of anything disruptive that Amazon is involved in." In this case, I hope the disruption begins soon. Turning to the latest in the HQ2 sweepstakes, listener Mark Roberts was happy to email me a link to a story touting Dallas as the best place for Amazon's new headquarters. That's according to an analysis by the Wall Street Journal, citing North Texas's large tech workforce as the main draw. Quote, "A large tech labor force and middle-of-the-road ranks for nearly everything else places Dallas at the top of our ranking," the journal said. The analysis ranked Dallas and 3 locations near Washington, D.C. in their first tier of prospects, followed by 3 cities in a second tier, Atlanta, Miami, and Boston. With those bigger stories behind us, I'd like to turn to a couple of more entertaining news items about Amazon. I was tickled when I first heard about Amazon's quirky retail initiative called Treasure Truck, complete with a funny ad showing pirates checking out one of these trucks after arriving on shore from their pirate ships. I spotted an Amazon release this week saying that the trucks would be coming to Whole Foods locations in cities across the country. So since we've got a Whole Foods store right here in downtown Denver now, I made sure that my Amazon iPhone app had my Denver location entered, not Boston, to see if there were any trucks coming. I soon received a text message via my Amazon iPhone app telling me that a treasure truck was stopping in downtown Denver today between 12:30 and 1:30. Each day the trucks have just one deal that they are selling. You buy it online and then you receive a QR code you can put on your phone and then go pick it up from the truck. Today's offer was a box of fixings for 12 sliders, those little burgers on buns, and it comes with a chunk of sharp cheddar cheese and the buns. The price was $28, which I got an authorization for from the Kindle Chronicles Research Fund, so I could go check it out. The truck was scheduled to be near a bar at Welton and 18th Street, so I took the Free Mall shuttle down 16th Street, walked a couple of blocks, and then was trying to find the truck. I had my iPhone recording, and here is my experience, my first experience with a treasure truck purchase.
Oh, I see it. It's on Broadway, parked on the sidewalk. It says treasure truck in big red letters on blue. It kind of looks like a carnival vehicle, something you'd find in a circus. I think it's like a motorhome, and they drive around distributing the treasures. You sign up for them. I get my Amazon app going here. There it is. Cute. We got music, 12 sliders. We got bubbles coming out of a machine here.
What's up?
When? Yep.
I got a scanner. You know what that means?
So how many of these are you going to give out today?
We sold out of them.
Oh, you did?
Yeah. A pretty good amount. So.
Yeah. Are you going to be here like every day in Denver? Or?
So we only started in Denver end of October.
Yeah.
And we do multiple. We started around to multiple offers a week, and this is just one of the locations we go. So it's not every day, but it's every couple of days. Here
oh, I see. Yeah.
And sometimes we're not down here. So like we did offers 2 days ago down at Whole Foods because we sold the Instant Pot pressure cooker.
Oh yeah.
So we did use the Whole Foods location. We go up to Superior. We're trying to go down to Littleton, Park Mall area to around the truck. But yeah, we'll know that day.
Because I get it right on my
just like
text
today,
and
it'll
everything.
tell you all the
pretty
stops
cool.
we're at today. So
yeah. All right. Well, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, they had a high-energy team of young people there going in and fetching the boxes and giving it to people. There wasn't a huge crowd around, but it was steady. One guy drove off with his box of sliders tucked under his feet on his Vespa, and somebody else was walking to a car that they'd parked nearby. So, and like you said, they sold out of them. I'm sure he wasn't going to tell me how many they'd sold in the truck because that kind of information wasn't going to be passed out. So when I got home, I cooked 4 of the sliders for a late lunch. Darlene said hers was pretty tasty. And then tonight I cooked up a second batch. They were like, some were beef, some were chicken, and there's a lot of variety to it. And then there were little buns. I didn't use the buns tonight. I added the meat to my favorite dinner, Kraft macaroni and cheese with some cooked peas and Cholula hot sauce. Very good. The sliders choice was a good one with the Super Bowl coming up on Sunday, of course. There's a cute teaser for Amazon's minute-and-a-half ad, which showed Jeff Bezos getting the news that Alexa had lost her voice. And it wasn't until the full ad came out that we saw an array of celebrities filling in for Alexa with fairly troubling results. When Alexa loses her voice, you see the actors and stars. I didn't recognize one of them. I did, the one at the end. And the people who are pretending to be Alexa are wearing headsets that have these blue rings circling their ear, just like the blue ring on Echo devices when Alexa is listening. The best scene was the last one, in which a very nefarious-looking Anthony Hopkins sits in a chaise longue feeding a peacock as he attempts to woo the young woman who thought she was summoning the real Alexa. Here's the audio of the ad.
In Austin, it's 60 degrees with a... Alexa?
Amazon's Alexa lost her voice this morning, causing
Alexa lost her voice? How is that even possible?
We have the replacements ready. Just say the word.
And you're sure this is going to work?
Yeah.
Alexa, show me a recipe for a grilled cheese sandwich.
Pathetic. You're 32 years of age, and you don't know how to make a grilled cheese sandwich. Its name is the recipe, you...
Alexa, how far is Mars?
How far is Mars? Well, how am I supposed to know? I've never been there. This guy want to go to Mars. For what? There's not even oxygen there.
Alexa, set the mood.
Now setting the mood. You're in the bush, and you're just so dirty, and you're so sweaty, because it's hot in that bush.
Alexa, reboot.
Alexa, play some country music.
I don't dance now. I make money move.
No, Alexa, country music.
There's kind of an amazing gap here where there isn't any sound at all, and then the wrong music comes on.
I be in and out them dance so much I know they tired of me.
Alexa, call Brandon.
I'm afraid Brandon is a little tied up. But do let me know if there's anything I can help you with. Jessica? Good boy.
Thanks, guys, but I'll take it from here.
When Darlene heard me playing that earlier before she went to bed, she said, "Why is that funny?" And I tried to explain to her that I thought it was kind of edgy and that they were putting Alexa out there, getting Jeff Bezos in on the gag, and but it didn't pass the Darlene test for being something that she thought was funny. She might have to see it on the Super Bowl itself. As I recorded the ad on my Mac computer, I did not turn Alexa on my Echo Show off because I had read a fascinating story by Brad Stone at Bloomberg explaining that Amazon not only is putting up a clever out-of-the-box ad, it has gone so far as to somehow make the ad not trigger millions of Echo devices around the world that will be listening. Now, I think this may have already been done with previous ads that mention Alexa, but Stone really did the reporting on it. He cited a Reddit user who figured out that a patent filed by Amazon describes how a TV commercial could transmit an inaudible acoustic signal to tell Alexa to ignore its wake word. The Reddit user a year ago discovered that Alexa ads transmit weakened levels of sound in an upper portion of the audio spectrum outside the most sensitive range of human hearing. Pretty clever. Worth putting some engineering mojo into it, actually, because it would head off a problem of Echo devices interrupting the ad all over the country, and her name is mentioned 10 times in 90 seconds. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of comment about this ad, as a lot of people just watch the Super Bowl for the ads, and I'd love to hear what you think about it. You can send me an email at podchronicles@gmail.com, and I'll let you know next week if Darlene thought it was any funnier when she actually saw it on the TV, if she ends up watching the TV that enough to see it. But we'll probably just turn to those collections of the ads so we can see the Alexa ad and the other things that show up on the game. Of course, I am for the New England Patriots, let the record show, in case my daughter Rue and Mike are listening. And truth be told, I'm not a huge organized sports fan, but when it gets to be the Super Bowl and one of my two hometowns is in the running, then my interest rises just above zero to we may actually tune it in and see what's going on. For the Tech Tip, I'm going to share an email from listener Steve Mashburn because he raises an interesting question. I'm going to follow it up for next week's show, but if you think you have some answers to it, please email me at podchronicles@gmail.com. Steve writes, "Hi, Len. I have a few questions I've been thinking about since I bought my Kindle Oasis 2. Maybe you can answer these as you interview guests from Amazon. 1. How is my reading speed measured? The device tells me how many minutes I have left in a chapter, but I wonder how this is calculated. For example, if I flip forward or backwards several pages, will this make my Oasis assume I'm a faster reader than I actually am? Good question. 2. Is there a way to reset or remeasure my speed? Mine thinks I will finish chapters much faster than I actually do. 3. Is there a way to find my reading statistics? I assume the device is gathering how many pages, words I am reading, and how much time I'm spending reading, similar to the stats Audible collects. Apologize if these are questions you have answered in previous podcasts. I've only listened to the last 10 or so. I have not addressed these interesting questions, so I'm glad you asked them, Al. That's from Al Saikali in Miami. And we'll see if we can get some answers to this by next week. Time now for the interview. Writing thrillers is actually Meg Gardiner's third career. After earning a BA in economics and a law degree from Stanford, she worked as a trial attorney in Los Angeles, and then she taught legal research and writing at the University of California at Santa Barbara. That's the city where she grew up. Her husband's work led her and her family to relocate in London. That's where Meg began writing and publishing novels in the UK. They have since returned to the U.S. and are living in Austin, Texas. You will hear her talk in the interview about her first novel, China Lake. That's the one that won the 2009 Edgar Award for Best Paperback Original, and it's the one that caught Stephen King's eye and led to Meg's introduction to U.S. readers. She is also a 3-time Jeopardy champion, a 1-time mime, and a citizen of the Chickasaw Nation. I reached Meg by Skype on Wednesday, January 31st, the day after her new book was released. She was, it looked like she was in a hotel room in Dallas getting ready for reading that night night at Inturabang Books. I'll have a link to the entire tour schedule that she has in the show notes. I began our conversation by asking what UNSUB stands for and how she got interested in researching and writing about UNSUB cases.
UNSUB stands for Unknown Subject. It's the person that the law enforcement is searching for in a criminal investigation. The FBI originally came up with that term and still uses it. And that's basically what the stories are about, an investigator hunting for the criminals and they don't know who it is, and they're trying to uncover them and catch them.
And then what led to your writing the first UNSUB novel that you published last year?
I've written a lot of crime novels, and I realized I hadn't written anything about one of the cases that really chilled me in real life from the time I was very small and lingered in the back of my mind for, till now, and that was the Zodiac case. I grew up in Southern California, but remember hearing about this killer on the news and knew that this was a very dangerous and frightening person that the police couldn't catch. I had seen a picture in the paper drawn by a police artist from a witness's description of a gunman wearing like a black executioner's hood with this bizarre symbol on the front. And that was not like anything I'd ever seen in the newspaper before, and was just scared witless. And I asked my dad, "Who is that?" And he said, "That's the Zodiac." And I said, "Who is he?" He said, he's a bad guy. He's a killer. And, I went to Catholic school, and we were taught that there's always a motive when someone does bad things, greed or anger. And I said, "But why does he just kill people?" And my dad said he likes it. Huh. And that was just such a shock that someone would do this just for the thrill, just to terrorize people, just because he could. And it really kind of undermined a lot of things I thought I knew about the way the world worked. And of course, nobody knew who he was. He was out there. I went to bed and listened to the noise on the freeway outside and wondered if he was going to be like peeking in my window.
How old were you at the time?
I was in grade school, probably third grade or something like that. But
so pretty impressionable.
Yes, obviously. And I have a wild imagination, which is why I'm able to write crime novels, thrillers. But it's stuck with me, even though I was in grade school. And I realize now nobody ever has identified the Zodiac. No one knows who he was. No one's ever been arrested. And he could still be out there reading the newspapers, listening to podcasts. Who knows?
Reading your book.
Yeah. I love readers, but not that much.
Yeah. So let's set the story for the first in the series, UNSUB. What's going on there for Caitlin Hendricks, your detective?
Caitlin Hendricks is a young cop, only been a detective a few months, and she ends up hunting a legendary killer who was sparked by the Zodiac, a similar killer, and it's an UNSUB who committed multiple murders in the Bay Area and was never caught. And the person who could never catch him was the man leading the investigation, who was Caitlin's father. So he could never break the case. The case broke him instead, and the killer got away. Mac is still a broken man. The family was ruined, and Caitlin has tried to overcome all this by becoming a detective herself. She's out there to protect the public and try to use this to gain mastery over her own life. But of course, it doesn't always work. And when the killer comes back, she wants a part of it. She wants to be on the investigation team that's hunting him. And since she's a baby detective, she jumps in way over her head, but she's not going to let anything deter her. And I don't want to get too deep into the story because I want to leave people in suspense. But right. Like the Zodiac, the killer in UNSUB, the Prophet is a master of mind games, toys with the cops, with the media, loves to terrorize the public, sends them messages, weird codes, and basically dares them to catch him.
Is the character of Mac Hendricks based on a real detective that was involved in that Zodiac case, or is that part of your creative creation?
All the characters are fictional. I do know that there were a number of extremely accomplished, dedicated, experienced detectives who that's the case that they could never break. Dave Tosky, who was the San Francisco Police Department homicide inspector, who led the case for many, many years, he just died a couple of weeks ago, and that case still remains open. But
that must have been devastating to work at that hard and never catch the guy.
So many cops. You're out there determined to try to clean these people off the streets, and when you can't, it's an open wound.
Yeah, for sure. I was interested to see that your father was an English teacher at the University of California. Do you attribute any of the success of your thrillers to anything that he taught you about Chaucer and other literature that he was a specialist in?
I don't write in Old English, so no. But no, it was wonderful. He encouraged me to love books, love literature, love poetry, to love music, art, and he always encouraged me to reach for excellence. And when I would write something and, I was in school or whenever, and I would run it past him, he would gently but very clearly let me know that I could do better. And so I always knew that the expression, creativity, all that was extremely prized in our family, but it wasn't just something that you dumped out of your mind, in terms of self-expression, that if you were going to do this, do it for fun, but do it right.
Yeah, have a high standard in the writing itself.
Yes. And he encouraged me to love books. He had, he did have Chaucer and Beowulf and Shakespeare lining the bookshelves. His car was so full of books. I thought everybody's parents, that they had a back seat you couldn't get in because it was full of library books.
Yeah.
But, all the top shelf in his bookshelf was the mysteries and thrillers, Elmore Leonard's and John D. MacDonald. So I knew that we were supposed to read widely.
Yeah. The UNSUB series is being developed as a television series by CBS. Can you give us an update on that and how soon we might be able to watch it?
It's in development as a one-hour network drama by CBS, and they have their schedule. The pilot is being written and executive produced by a writer named Liz Friedman, who is – I'm very excited that she's working on it. She's an Emmy-nominated screenwriter for Orange is the New Black. She worked on Marvel's Jessica Jones and on House and Elementary. And watching her adapt my work into something that will be fit for the screen it's exciting to see such a brilliant writer working on it.
Yeah, I bet it is. There's a great intersection with you and Stephen King back in 2007. He picks up a book from his pile of many books that people wanted him to read, and he gets on a plane and he flies to London, and it ends up being your book, and he's blown away by it, and he gets there and he's surprised that you're not published in the U.S., and he writes a great column in Entertainment. And then it sounds like he got fairly proactive talking to American publishers as to why you weren't being published. Did Penguin approach you with a contract pretty quickly after that, or what sort of a rest of the story is there when Stephen got so involved?
Yeah, the Penguin is not his publisher, but he read my books. At the time I had 5 out, the Evan Delaney series, and I was just already blown away that he read and liked my work. He's one of my favorite authors of all time, and to think that he thought I had chops was just incredible. And then I discovered that he was writing this column for Entertainment Weekly, and the strange thing was, well, not so strange, but 48 hours after that column was published, there were 14 American publishers that decided to take another look at my work, and I signed with Penguin very shortly after that. That's amazing.
So the response was pretty quick.
Yeah. Sometimes it takes a big voice to get you to pay attention.
Yeah.
But I cannot thank him enough.
Yeah. Have you had a chance to play a similar role for any other up-and-coming authors to give them a boost recalling the help that Stephen gave you?
If I can. I mean, I don't have nearly the footprint that he does. I try if I come upon an author, and there are so many wonderful authors there, if I can mention them on Facebook or Twitter or tell friends about them, that really just to give them a boost, that paying it forward is extremely wonderful. And I do have to mention that, shockingly, I still get excited about this. I opened Twitter last night and Stephen King had told people to read my new book. So.
Oh, that's fabulous. Well, let's talk about the new book. We know we've got at least one avid reader on it. What's happening to Caitlin Hendricks in the new book, which was just published yesterday? Yes.
Into the Black Nowhere is the sequel to UNSUB, and it finds Caitlin now working for the FBI as a special agent. She is assigned to the Elite Behavioral Analysis Unit, and she's with them as they are investigating serial crimes. And women in the story, women are disappearing on Saturday nights in southern Texas. And so the local law enforcement asked the specialist unit to come and assist them with trying to find out if they have what they fear, which is more than just abductions. One woman disappears from a movie theater, another from her own car at a stoplight, and another one from her living room when she goes to check on her baby. So they think that they might have a serial killer, and it turns out that they do. And it turns into a cat and mouse game between Caitlin and the FBI team and their prime suspect, who is charming, professional, very successful, well-liked in the community, and nobody really can believe that this guy could be anything less than the sterling all-American he appears to be.
Now, and am I right that that character is based on Ted Bundy in a similar way that the Prophet was based on the Zodiac?
Yeah, Bundy-esque. I was fascinated yet again by another case. Bundy wasn't an UNSUB per se, because after many years he was exposed as not this bright law student who actually worked for the governor of Washington and seemed to be just everybody's best buddy. He worked on a suicide hotline where he seemed to be, dedicated to the community. But he was the one who was abducting all these mostly college students from universities in Seattle, and there are still so many women who have never been found. He would just walk up to them. He'd pretend to be injured. So, ladies, gentlemen, be careful if someone walks up to you with a cast on their arm or crutches and papers spilling out of a briefcase and seeming to be so helpless and, puppy dog eyes, and just needs you to come over and help him put something in his car, because the thing he's going to put in his car might be you.
Wow. We were out walking our dog in Denver yesterday, my wife and I. We got a little Yorkie, and it's a nice, safe neighborhood, Larimer Street. And this guy stopped my wife and reached down to pat Claire, our Yorkie. And having, been totally into the Black Nowhere, I just had this moment of suspicion. Was this guy scoping out my wife for a murder? And it made me wonder that, given how deeply you go into these stories and get, sort of familiar enough with this evil to write about it effectively, do you end up being a very suspicious, anxious person, knowing that bad stuff can happen in relatively safe situations?
I don't. I think I still think that the world is fairly more light than dark. And, I grew up in a very safe neighborhood and with, loving parents. I had a good childhood. I have a happy marriage, and nothing terrible has ever happened to my family or my children. So maybe I just put all those deep, dark fears on the page and to remind myself that I should pay attention.
Yeah. Why do you think serial killers fascinate us so much?
They are modern kind of monster. I mean, one of the oldest stories that humanity tells itself is defeating the monster. And whether that's the dark shape that howls in the night outside the cave, or something that drags a club around, or sea monsters, humanity always wants to try to defeat the monster. And to do that, we have to try to identify it and understand it. And the idea that the monster walks among us, disguised as one of the community, that I think sets us on edge. And when we look at these people, we wonder, how can you smile and give us change at the supermarket, or file, do our taxes for us or whatever it is, and then decide to have this little hobby like chopping people up in the basement. I think also, we as readers, we like to take a little trip to the dark side and try to understand what someone's mind would be like who explores, looks at the world this way. And parts of us, I think, also hope that if we could only understand these people, that we could be safe.
Yeah.
We would know how to stay away from them or catch them. So that's part of the fascination.
Well, my listeners, I think, are 99% ebook readers, Kindle readers mainly, and I'm curious for you as an author, when a book of yours is published and based on information that you get from Dutton, do you have any sense of how many people read your books on a Kindle or other e-reader versus read it on paper?
A very strong percentage of my readers read on Kindle or other platforms, but probably still the majority of readers read it on paper, but a really big percent of my readership does read it digitally.
Yeah.
And I'm totally on board with that. I'm not in the business of selling paper. I'm in the business of telling stories. So I am happy for people to imbibe stories however they want to.
How about your own reading? Do you tend to do it on paper or on Kindle or other device?
I switch back and forth.
Yeah. For travel, it's probably
yes,
good.
Yes, exactly. For travel, I've got my Kindle loaded up.
Yeah.
I always keep a paperback handy just in case there's that the electric grid goes down for a month.
Yep.
and eventually I would run out of juice, but I always have a loaded Kindle with me, so I can never run out of books to read.
I've done a lot of thinking about the difference reading a book on a Kindle, especially since I read at night a lot on a Kindle versus on paper. And I've got this idea that it's somehow I feel closer to the author on the Kindle. There's less type at once. There's less sort of distraction of 2 pages of type instead of 1. And I almost have a feeling like your stories are more scary on a Kindle than they would be on paper, because the words are sort of closer, especially on a e-ink Kindle as opposed to an iPad or something like that, where they're sort of flashing at you. But this is sort of soft ambient light, and here come these words to you of a terrifying story. But
that's fascinating. That of course I should make it so the print like jumps out at you or something.
Oh yeah, that would do it. You would cause some heart attacks if you could do that. If all of a sudden something happens. Yeah. Well, and the other thing I remembered from the Stephen King story is that one of the reasons he picked up your book for that flight was it had relatively large print. And
I know.
So it was going to be an easy read. And, of course, that's one of the great things about the Kindle is you can have the type be whatever size you want.
Absolutely, yeah. Well,
can you say what's next for Caitlin Hendricks?
UNSUB 3. I am writing it now, and it's going to be another case for her with the FBI, and it's a series, so I'm not giving too much away if I say that she survives book 2, Into the Black Nowhere, but it's a life and death chase, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on and affects her. So she picks up from there with another case.
Does some of the other FBI people Into the Black Nowhere continue on, or were also in the first one? So it's kind of a team of
It's characters. A team, yeah. She's and just like in real life, a new agent is assigned to a unit, and they go through training for a couple of years, and they try to keep them with the team, rotating through different divisions sometimes to expose them to investigate different topics, but yeah, her team in this book will be back.
And is that due out by the end of the year, do you think, for readers?
Probably 2019. Let's see how fast I can train my fingers to type.
You better get back to it. Well, and you're going to be traveling quite a bit on a tour with the new book?
I am. I was in Austin yesterday. I am in Dallas as we speak, talking tonight at Interrobang Books, then going to Houston to Murder by the Book, and Florida to Murder on the Beach, and Phoenix to The Poison Pen. All these places that sound like they're nothing but death and destruction. And they're really the most wonderful, warm bookstores full of dedicated, knowledgeable booksellers and great readers. So I love it.
That is. There's kind of a contrast there, but I can just picture the energy that will greet you when you arrive with the new story. That'll be good. Well, terrific. I have been speaking with Meg Gardiner, whose 14th book, Into the Black Nowhere, an UNSUB novel, was published yesterday, January 30th, by Dutton. Thanks very much, Meg.
Thanks a lot. It was great to be here with you.
In content, I want to pass along an item I got from someone at Amazon that was spreading the word about Prime Reading. That's a program. It's not new, but it's worth checking out if you don't have the Kindle Unlimited, which provides all kinds of free books. Even just by having a Prime membership, you get more than 1,000 of the most popular books and magazines at no cost. And this particular release, which was sent to me, highlighted some of the books that are currently available. There's some books that I recognize. The Hiding Place, Corrie ten Boom, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee by D. Brown, The Good Earth, Pearl Buck, Forever is the Worst Long Time by Camille Pagan, The Widow's Network, Nick McDonnell, Into the Darkness, Crimson Worlds, Refugees, Book 1, J. Allen, The Line, J.D. Horn, one of Darlene's favorite books, The Little Prince by Anton de Saint-Exupéry, and In the Company of Women, Grace Bonney. There also, you get magazines as part of this, including The New Yorker, which is something I like to read from time to time, National Geographic Traveler, Martha Stewart Living. I want to conclude with an email from Al Sakali again. He writes, Dear Len, I wanted to share with you a potentially very negative recent experience with Amazon that was turned around by your podcast. Well, that got my attention. Here's the story. I saw some unauthorized charges on my credit card. I would later learn someone had acquired my credit card number, and set themselves up as a seller on Amazon. I communicated through the app to complain about the 3 unauthorized charges of $39.99. The app chat led to a representative calling me. To make a long story short, I was transferred to 6 different representatives in the course of an hour and 15 minutes before I gave up and hung up on them. Remembering the jeff@amazon.com email you mentioned during your podcast, I shared an email about my experience. That evening, I received a call from a representative at Amazon, and within 15 minutes, he had identified the cause of the charges and marked them as unauthorized and closed the fraudulently created seller account. I then contacted my bank to have the charges reversed. I wanted to say thank you for sharing that email address, which I suspect led to the call that resolved my issue. That's a great story. So let's all remember that normally I think my experience is I get pretty good help from Amazon tech when I call, but it's nice to know we can sort of go nuclear if we have to, and we're not, I don't think, going to be very often dealing with Jeff Bezos himself, but I think that jeff@amazon.com email is staffed by some people who have authority to really make things happen, and in this case solve a real problem that Al had. That's a great story. Al concludes with, lastly, I want to say thank you for your podcast. It is the only podcast I've ever looked forward to. I was skeptical at first that a podcast about a Kindle would be interesting. Again, I couldn't have been more wrong. I love the updates. The interviews are usually interesting. The tech tips are great, and I enjoy the small personal insights into your world. I have been considering developing a podcast in privacy and data security law, my area of law practice. Your podcast is inspiring me to pursue that goal. Thanks for everything, Al. I told Al I hope he makes a podcast, privacy and data security. That's a fascinating topic, and I told him I'd be glad to share whatever knowledge I I've picked up along the way here if it might be helpful to them. So if you want to send me a message, you can send it to podchronicles@gmail.com. And it's always great to hear from listeners, new and old. And part of the rewards of this is getting to know people over the years and hearing from new people and just all the varied experiences that we share here that tend to gravitate around this topic. That's it for this week. I don't have anyone signed up yet to join us for next week's guests. My grandson James is a possibility. He's a voracious reader and Kindle devotee. He's going to turn 12 years old on February 21st. We're going to have a party for him and my dad, who will be 91, on February 18th. So we're going to have 2 cakes at that party at my parents' house, and we'll be flying back to Cambridge for a while to help them celebrate. Today, by the way, February 2nd, is James's mother's birthday. She's 43. Happy birthday, Sarah. This is Len Edgerly for the Kindle Chronicles from downtown Denver. I really appreciate your taking the time to listen to my show. Have a great day. Bye.